Ang Lee's 2003 Hulk film has been one of the most difficult movies I've ever watched, as I was never able to bear the entire thing in a single sitting. As a kid, I was just too restless to pay attention, nothing made me feel invested in the characters, and I'd eventually get bored and wander off. So today, we're going to fix all of that, because I'm finally going to see this film all the way through, and then we're going to take a look at the video game adaptation, and let me tell you, if it's not at the very least decent, I'm gonna get mad. Looking into it, work on this project began around 1990, over a decade prior to its release, with early scripts and animation tests being conducted and ultimately scrapped. Some reshuffling occurred, and then Ang Lee stepped in and took over the direction. He's been responsible for some big films in his time, including Life of Pi and Brokeback Mountain of all things. We kick off the movie with a sick karate move. Hi-ya! And then we're treated to an opening credits montage of sea life torture porn. I'm not kidding. It just goes on, shot after shot of all these innocent creatures being experimented on and injected with various chemicals. Now, to summarise the backstory, David Banner was a scientist working on human modification, and while testing the effects on himself, recklessly knocked up his girl, and then together, they had Bruce, who never seemed too normal. Daddy Banner was booted from the project, sabotages the laboratory, and then races home to violently attempt to kill his own son like a serial killer maniac, accidentally sticking his missus in the process as the radioactive nuke blows up in the background. Now, if that was a boring exposition dump, then you should try sitting through the first hour of this film it takes to get all of that information across to the viewer. Maybe we're spoiled with the modern onslaught of Marvel films, but they at least know how to get this shit out of the way. Maybe except for the initial run of movies prior to the first Avengers, the pace and build-up is a lot slower than we're conditioned to after so many of these. But Ang Lee, I guess being trained in the more serious and dramatic storytelling, just drags the pace of this film to a screeching halt the entire way through. The general structure is a quiet, whispery exposition dump with the very occasional high-energy destruction or fight scene thrown in. These moments are really good, and the CGI, in all honesty, holds up really well. I mean, Hulk looks a bit like a PS2 character in some of the shots, but for the most part, combining this with practical effects on set really helps to sell the illusion of realism. Why did he have to look like me, though? He's even kind of short and stocky, what the hell? But yeah, I just wish there was more Hulk in this Hulk film. We spend so much time diving into the heartbreaking backstory of the awfully tragic father-son relationship, not to mention the sheer coincidence that his love interest happened to grow up in the same middle-of-nowhere desert Americana newt town that I've ever seen. It's no wonder I had so much trouble watching this as a kid. The only things I remember going into this again was the dogfight scene with the rabid poodle. A good scene, but it takes place in total darkness, no doubt to try and hide the older CGI effects, which is a shame because, like I mentioned, most of it has stood the test of time. And the scene where Daddy turns into Absorbing Man still gives me goosebumps. But the only other thing I remember is the escape from the military base. Now, this scene is still awesome, but it's shown to us in such a dog shit manner with all of these awful comic book transitions. It's like they let a baby loose in the editing booth with a bunch of Windows Movie Maker effects. Now, doing this once or twice to convey a big moment from multiple perspectives would have been cool to see, but it's like even the people making this movie were so bored off their asses, they started messing around with random transitions just to amuse themselves. They even remove characters off screen, telling the audience that they're no longer relevant, just to bring them back in again. What is happening? Oh, and of course, Hulk jumping through the desert is still as hilarious as ever. 10 out of 10. Look at him go! He's like a kid with ADHD in a sand pit. And let me tell you, Over an hour and 30 minutes into this movie, and only now are we getting to see the Hulk properly do Hulk-like things. And it falls flat on its ass. There is no drama. Things are just happening for the sake of them happening. God, it's so frustrating. That's me right now, conveyed perfectly in the final confrontation between father and son, which finishes off the movie with the most visually confusing ending I think I've ever seen. Again, it takes place in pitch black darkness, so I don't even know what I'm looking at half of the time, and on top of the total narrative 180 from the storyline we were on mere moments ago, it sucks. Ugh, and not to mention the cheeky ha-ha for the audience seeing Banner hiding out in South America is just the cherry on top of this filthy, oozing sundae. Have I seen worse? Sure. But with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man setting the bar for this initial revival in superhero films the year prior, this version of Hulk was doomed from the start. While I can appreciate what they were going for narratively with the deeper backstory and taking things more seriously to get away from the campy TV show, the visual effects, both practical and computer generated, are also quite a strong aspect, but the biggest undersight here was spending so much time on these characters who continually give us the same information over and over. It takes so long to get towards any sort of payoff that always feels like a rushed afterthought anyway. It's honestly more fun exploring the DVD menus, and that is no understatement because there are a lot of goodies on here. Behind the scenes content, different artists' renditions of the transformation scene, interviews and the evolution of the character's design, and even an interactive Hulk anatomy which gives us little bits of trivia. If you click on his big booty, it tells you about his hilariously exaggerated leaping ability, or you can click on his big green boner for a bareback mountain trailer. Well, I've finally seen the movie all the way through, and it's mediocre to say the least. This is such an exhausting watch that I don't even have the energy to be angry about it. So, let's just move on to some video games. Now, you're probably used to seeing Hulk appear as part of a much larger cast in titles like The Avengers, Disney Infinity, and the endless amount of Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel Heroes, and Ultimate Alliance games, while franchises like Spider-Man and X-Men always stole the spotlight. But don't worry, because Hulk still got a piece of the action. The first game to hit home consoles was Incredible Hulk in 1994 for the 16-bit systems. Let's take a quick look. So, story-wise, that's all you get. You're immediately open to fire, which is fun. You can punch people, grab them and crack their skulls. You can even pick up objects and throw them around, which is neat, but god it feels clunky to play. There isn't a lot of moves and each guy takes forever to kill. It's the first level. Why is it so hard to mop the floor with these bastards? Aside from that, you spend most of your time aimlessly climbing around ladders down into the sewer where things get even worse. Look at how long it takes to kill just one guy! Oh, for fuck's sake. Why can't I make this jump? Why can't I make this jump? These pipes are a maze and they're crawling with foot soldiers, and when they each take so damn long to kill, you take damage the entire time. And once your energy is drained, you turn into Bruce Banner, which sucks because one hit and you're dead. Thankfully the enemies can't hit Bruce if you crawl around on the floor, but god, he looks so pathetic. Is this the Incredible Hulk or the Incredible Sulk? Does this look fun? Who wants to play as a human when you can be a big green guy with muscles and babes? Stupid. To turn back into Hulk, you need to crawl around like a bitch until you've found a gun that allows you to shoot open these crates to find some radioactive pills. So you gobble all them down, and now when you take damage again, you get all green and nasty, but I prefer to make as much progress as possible crawling around first, just so that I don't die so quickly. Oh, and by the way, that gun, it's gone now. Yeah, that's right, you get 2 shots. You only get 2 goddamn shots! This is awful! If you're going to continually force me to play as a human, at least let me run and gun these guys. I hate this so much! You don't even get full health when you turn back into Hulk, so you're dead again within moments. What's the point? You might as well just use the gun to blow your fucking brains out and play something else. Level 2 is a maze. All these rock dudes coming out of walls, switches to open walkways and change the level layout, and it just goes on and on. The game looks and sounds fine for the 16-bit era, but gameplay-wise, it's like an outdated arcade title. Clunky, stiff controls with no direction, every enemy is a roadblock, and now my pause button on the controller is broken. Great. Guess I'm not even allowed a second to collect my thoughts here. I hope I don't need to take a piss anytime soon. Oh, nice. Fucking beautiful. A switch that drops me into a pit of spikes. And now I'm back at the start? Bastard! I can't take this anymore! Wait a minute. I'm not the Hulk. I'm just a fat guy painted green. And I've still got another game to play. Man, I've just got to remember to breathe. You know, the movie left me wanting a whole lot more, so let's hope this delivers. Thankfully, Eric Bana, the actor from the film, was available during production of both projects to lend his likeness and voice talent. He pulls into some rinky-dink deserted rest stop where he can no longer contain the Hulk, just in time for a military surprise for our opening tutorial. Hulk looks great, the cel-shaded style lends itself well to the comic book aesthetic, and the action is fast-paced, thank God. We sat through enough boring dialogue in the movie, it's time to get to the good shit. Our punches actually do a lot of damage, which is appreciated after that last disaster. We can still throw objects and swing them as weapons, grab people and smack them around, toss them. This is what I was expecting, but it's good. Well, until the pacing is shattered when we learn to deflect rockets by punching at them. Yeah, it's awkward as hell. But as it turns out, all of this is just a dream. And now, you guessed it, we're playing as Banner. Why must God torment me all of the time? This gameplay is more like stealth, making your way past guards, and let me tell you, it's no Metal Gear. Though I wouldn't really expect it to be either, but in these early stages anyway, there just isn't much really happening. It is cinematic though, I'll give it that. In an era before every other title was a walking simulator, mind you, it does help it to stand out somewhat. Rather than retelling the story of the movie, Radical devs opted to follow it up with a direct sequel, kind of like how the Incredibles game was followed with Rise of the Underminer. So Bruce is back from South America and an old scientist friend has found a cure for Hulk. Sneaking into the lab we find out it was just a setup, and Professor Crawford here merely wanted to harness the gamma energy for himself, transforming into Ravage and stealing the energy into an orb. Back in Hulk mode now, we give chase across the rooftops in an excellent scene combining a strong level of chaos and destruction with basic storytelling elements, and it's a long chase too, even spanning multiple levels. For as mindless as the gameplay is, just running amok, smashing and destroying everything in your path, it is satisfying and the physics are really good. I've always been a sucker for games that let you destroy your environment to any degree, but especially taking it a step further to scavenge for weapons. And we're playing as a beefy boy, so just about everything can be a weapon here. This actually reminds me of another Marvel superhero game, Neversoft's Spider-Man and its sequel. Short but satisfying levels broken up with concise and compelling cutscenes, similar environments with cavernous sewers, train yards, and of course rooftops, and then after playing a few levels, you reach a boss fight. Up first is Half-Life. And now's probably the part where I should come clean. I'm definitely not familiar with Hulk lore, that's for sure. But this is an interesting boss battle given that you can't touch him, so you've got to use various objects at your disposal to throw for ranged attacks. Kind of like Shocker from Spider-Man 2 on the PS1. Same concept, since he's all electrified, you need to deal damage by throwing objects at him. I'm going to draw the conclusion that this is more of a coincidence rather than intentional plagiarism. But it is interesting to note, both of Neversoft's games were revered by players, so you'd be absolutely mad not to draw some amount of inspiration if you're working on another Marvel superhero game. Well, I hate to say it, but maybe they should have been inspired to copy the part where the game is actually fun to play. Yep, I said it. This gets old very quickly. The next stage is more stealth, breaking into Alcatraz of all places, and it's brutal. Banner is not fun to play as. All he can do is walk around. At least get a skateboard under his feet, and then maybe I'd be able to enjoy this a little more. Without any diversity to the objectives or the way you play, there is no interest. The puzzles, if you can even call them that, are void of creativity, and there is always an arrow to keep you going in the right direction, as if you could ever get lost in such a scripted, linear environment. Thank God you turn green again once you get inside, but it's not much better when I've already seen all of these moves countless times up until now, with little variation in both the techniques you can use and the enemies you're fighting. There is just more things in your way, and these cramped hallways suck. It means there's no room to fight anybody, and if it wasn't for the supercharged slam ability, I'd have probably given up at this point because I am sick of it. Beat 'em up games have always tended to struggle with this in my opinion. 90% of the time, they're incredibly satisfying for the first handful of levels, but the enjoyment factor ages like milk. For me anyway. And this is why Hulk just couldn't really work in a video game setting. A big heavy that demolishes everything in their path? There is obviously a place for that, but it's as a supporting character in the Avengers, merely there to change up the pace a bit. So taking that and making it the entire foundation of a game just can't really work. Hulk is always going to be slow and heavy to control, which isn't fun to play without a strong number of combos to learn, or maybe even something like a skill tree. Did you ever play Spider-Man Friend or Foe? That had an excellent skill tree system. So without any of that, the constant battling of enemies gets so redundant and exhausting, you'll find yourself just trying to run past everyone, or in the worst cases when you're outnumbered 10 to 1, backtracking to a safer area to dispose of them one by one with more room and less hassle. And that's it. That's the game. And excluding Half-Life, who actually had some amount of effort, even so basic, put into the strategy of his battle, the rest of the boss fights get even more overwhelmingly tired because you just punch people. That's all you can do, and the health bar on these assholes, it just never goes down. Look at this. I can barely do any damage to this guy, and I've been here for 30 minutes. Oh, God. It's just a matter of staying out of the way, collecting every tiny morsel of health you can muster, and just hoping to get them in a good rhythm, or you're fucked. I'm all for games licensed from movies expanding upon the narrative and exploring other characters or storylines further, that's fine. But this game, taking place after the film, has drastically impacted the quality of boss fights we can expect to see. We're not going to be seeing any battles against Daddy Banner, which is a damn shame, as I feel like Absorbing Man would have offered up some incredible fight mechanics, merging with the floor and throwing objects around. That's already more complex than any of these, and the result is that this experience drags to a halt. We end up underground inside of a military base. Oh, like the one in the movie. Awesome! That scene was one of the very few highlights, so let's see how they ruin it. Oh, endless waves of the same fucking shit over and over again? I never would have guessed. Every time you punch one of these robot Hulks, they say, offensive move detected, and there is at least a couple hundred of these things in the level, so yeah, I'm offended at the piss poor effort they made here. What's with all of the dank grey interiors? It's so monotone. Where are the deserts, the cityscapes and the forests? Even when you are outside, it's always bloody nighttime, so excluding 2 very early levels, this entire game takes place in darkness. It's like a sensory deprivation tank when your mind just starts wandering and making things up. I wish someone would make a better Hulk game, for fuck's sake. Eventually we find ourselves back on Alcatraz, which is lame. Of all the places to visit in San Francisco, they can't even take this green ape onto the Golden Gate Bridge? We learn by this point in the game that some character called the Leader wants to use the Gamma Orb to breed an army of mutants. But what happened to the dude who betrayed us in the beginning? Well, his battle just kind of comes out of nowhere and is more of the same dumb bullshit, and now we're teleporting to a hidden lair beneath Alcatraz to confront the Leader.
Who the hell is that? Some kind of leader? You're the leader? You don't look anything like the Beans.
This Megamind dude has all the telekinesis and trippy illusion powers that you might expect from a dude who looks like that, resulting in, after almost 4 hours of relentless clod-hopping about with no purpose, fighting the same people with the same abilities we had in the first level, and fighting key villains multiple times, sometimes at the same time, fuck me. Finally, after all of that, we end on an actually decent boss battle. Well, in theory. This guy has all of the interesting attacks, but you can just hide over here and you're pretty safe, really. There's not much else to it. I mean, it is a hard fight, don't get me wrong. It's incredibly hard, especially when he pulls a sneaky and regenerates all of his health. But once he's defeated, we make a break for it through the collapsing underground structure, and thus ends the destructive power of the Hulk. And that's it. The first glimpse of colour that's not grey, and the game is over. With not much else to see beyond more of the same shit in endurance challenges and some of the behind the scenes content featured on the disc, I am so glad there is nothing left, because I never want to play this garbage ever again. Man, and I thought the movie was a waste of time, but this shit is making me angry. And you wouldn't like me when I'm fucking angry. With some of the most repetitive and uninspired gameplay I've ever witnessed, a complete lack of interest or variety beyond the first 3 levels, terrible pacing with impossible enemy roadblocks, awful boss fights that spike the difficulty, and a drab, depressing presentation trapped in grey hallways for the entire game, I am thoroughly disappointed. This egregious snorefest gets 4 out of 10. It's crazy to think that they actually had a sequel planned for this game, and I can see why. Hulk sold like gangbusters back in 2003, but the sequel ultimately evolved into Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. And I have heard good things, so maybe sometime in the future I'll get my hands on a copy and we can check it out. Oh, but in the meantime, how could I forget that other disaster that we played earlier? The new proud recipient of a 3 out of 10. Normally I'd want to get angry here, break the game, maybe go berserk and just scream, but I am just so exhausted from going through this mess that I just don't even have the energy anymore. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and remember to share it with your friends and on social media. I'm Square Eyed Jack, and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.